What is GWARNIN, bitches? Welcome back to the channel. And I've got a question. Are you toxic? No, I didn't think you were. You're just normal, trust me. But some people don't think that. Welcome, Laci Green. She is a newly semi-red-pilled SJW, thanks mainly to her love interest, Chris Ray Gunn. Thank you very much, sir. And she's just put out a video going through something called toxic masculinity, or the myth of toxic masculinity, should I say. And we're going to respond to it. Here we go.
Oh, hi babes, what's up? Welcome back. Just a heads up, today's video, I am a little bit sick. There are things happening in here.
Chris, what have you done to this poor woman?
The holidays are here, of course. I try to get into the Christmas spirit, but I live literally in a desert. And I feel like that it makes it feel like it's just summer all the time. It's 80 degrees outside. But despite all the sunshine and the warmth and the lights and the trees, something still feels a little bit toxic. Toilet seats around the world being left up. Filthy, disgusting men spreading their legs everywhere. Video games, those are happening. This is toxic. I'm talking, of course.
Okay, firstly, we are not leaving the toilet seat up. You are leaving it down. We spread our legs because we have those things called bollocks and we don't want to hurt them, and we have to keep them cooler because they tend to heat up. And video games, don't even fucking go there, Laci.
About toxic masculinity. This used to be like an obscure term, I feel like, and now it's all over social media. It's also all over not social media. You know, you got Breitbart, Fox News, constantly harping on universities for their masculinity programs. Then there's the good old New York Times, which recently published a piece arguing that if left to their own devices, men would kill their dads and sleep with their moms. So maybe things have gotten a little out of hand online with this stuff, which, you know, never happens.
And you know why it's got like that? Because us normal folk just hope that you fucking crazies will go away quietly into the night. And it doesn't happen. So then we have to debunk you with reason. God damn it.
Recently, my very favorite Canadian bundt cake stayed at my house, so I asked him what he thinks about all this.
So toxic masculinity is something that needs to be discussed, but it isn't discussed the right way. A lot of the people that use the term toxic masculinity kind of throw it as a blanket statement that kind of alienates people from the conversation, when it is actually representative of something that is inherent in masculinity that may not necessarily be the best possible thing.
So what, you're saying it's natural then? Men can naturally be pretty cuntish. Yeah, you're right. So what?
So I think that we should probably be talking about toxic masculinity in a way that doesn't call it toxic masculinity. Maybe we should kind of...
Toxic.
Yes, calling somebody toxic is probably not the best course of action when trying to reason with them. And yes, it is overused by people that just want to demean others.
What should we be talking about?
We should be talking about the behavior that men feel like they are forced to comply to based on like what media perceptions would tell them to. Being overly assertive, you know, if you go on a date with a girl expecting some form of like sexual compensation because you paid for her fucking bill. And, you know, I know a lot of guys are probably watching this and be like, I would never do that, and that's great. You would never do that. But it is a common thing.
Well, let's just be clear, you know, men just want to fuck. And some men are just worse at hiding it than others.
Being overly aggressive in some form of argument, that would be a case of toxic masculinity.
Again, being overly aggressive, I don't think it's a form of this toxic masculinity myth. I think it's just someone being a twat. And that goes for both sexes.
I was surprised to find, but also not, that I basically fully agreed with Funty on this, but I particularly agree in terms of what this term, toxic masculinity, sounds like. It sounds like you're saying masculinity is toxic. And I think that this is a bigger problem in social justice land. A lot of the language that is used to communicate sounds kind of shamey.
Bingo!
Personally, I don't care if we call it toxic masculinity or something else. It's not the words that matter to me. It is the underlying concept, which has to do with violence.
There is your first mistake, Laci. It's the words that matter to others, Calling somebody toxic might not matter to you, but it does to the person you are calling toxic. If they have an issue, calling them this will not resolve it in the fucking slightest.
First things first, masculinity isn't toxic, and neither are men. It's okay to be masculine, it's okay to be a man. Can't believe I have to say this, but here we are.
You may not believe it, Laci, but this is the world you have created.
I first heard this term toxic masculinity when I was doing a training to become a domestic violence crisis counselor. We were having a discussion about the relationship between gender and violence. Big picture, masculinity refers to all the things that we think it means to be a man. Here's a very non-exhaustive list. If you look at these masculine roles, these social expectations that we have of guys, nothing is super worrisome on its own, but some of these traits might be worrisome in some situations.
Let me correct you there, Laci. All of these traits are worrisome in some situations. All have positives and all have negatives.
Take aggression. Generally an undesirable social behavior. Please do not aggress people for no reason.
What's up, bro? What, bro? Sup, bro? Take a swing, bro. Right here, bro.
But aggression when I'm defending myself, justified.
I think some aggression in men is natural. Just look to the natural world and other species. And yes, socially it may be the wrong thing, but think about it when it comes to war. Where would you be now without men?
So this toxic bit really depends on the situation. There are 3 masculine roles in particular that I think are worth paying a little closer attention to. The expectation that men express dominance all the time, to be a real man, that's pretty much completely at odds with non-violence. Violence is about dominance. It can also be troubling when this expectation is turned against guys who are perceived as not being dominant or assertive or aggressive enough. Guys who are maybe physically smaller, guys who are soft-spoken, maybe a guy who's not a breadwinner, things like that. They're shamed, they're seen as valueless, and I think that's bullshit.
Men that do shame others are usually shunned by the group and society. You may not see it as you watch too much TV, Laci, but men just want the easy life. They don't want someone else telling them what to do. You're correct. But they also don't really want to tell others what to do either.
Emotional repression. Okay, if you're expected to repress your emotions, from the time you're a little kid, don't cry, man up, things like that, that's pretty obviously not healthy. I think that most people can acknowledge telling men that they can't feel things or that they always need to have, the strong stoic face on all the time, no matter what, is pretty messed up. It's cruel.
I think naturally men are just less emotional than women. I think that's quite obvious. And I think from that natural trait comes some education that may be off. Speaking from personal experience, I am just not as emotional as my other half. It just is a fact that life events don't affect me in the same way that they do my missus.
Okay, 3, the one that comes up the most in my world, sex as status. The expectation that we have of young men is that they need to have a lot of sex, it's bad to be a virgin. What kind of behavior might that encourage in sexual situations? And what does the belief that men should always, want sex, always be having sex mean for men who are sexually assaulted, men who didn't want it? It's the same line of thinking that is used to dismiss the seriousness of male sexual assault, especially when the perpetrator is a woman. When it's a guy or even a little boy, 11, 12 years old, that's violated, people just don't take it as seriously. They might even congratulate him for it.
I'd actually completely agree with you here. I think men just like to fuck more than women. I think that's natural. But yes, there is some shaming that goes on, especially in school, especially with younger men. And yeah, that's a problem.
Now that's what I call toxic masculinity. I'm calling the police right now. My eardrums are burst. Alright, that's enough megaphoning. So that's basically how I see it. So I asked you guys for your thoughts on Twitter, and some of you seem to be getting at basically the same thing that I'm saying. Some of you said that toxic masculinity isn't real, that this is just sort of a way to shame men for doing the same things that women are encouraged to do, which is interesting. I'm open to hearing more on that. Others of you asked, well, what about toxic femininity? What indeed? Babe, what are my toxic femininity levels like right now?
What are your toxic femininity levels?
Where are they at, like, roughly?
What scale are we using? Is this like a hot pepper scale?
1 to 10.
Okay. I don't know, I guess, I'm just gonna guess, like, even? 5?
What?
Or
I'm
in
like
the-
halfway all the way to toxic?
Yeah, halfway is default.
Okay, so
Halfway is really like the like where everybody starts. If there is a toxic masculinity, then there must be a toxic femininity because I'm an egalitarian.
I think we've just hit the nail on the head. Both sexes can be complete and utter cunts. Or there are neither.
Okay, so what is it then?
2 hours later.
Anything that could be deemed toxic femininity, and I say that having no love for the term would
Let me help you, Chris. Mummy worship, vicious backstabbing, conniving, Wonder Woman syndrome, or feminism in general, female self-hatred, female victimization, gender manipulation, and angry woman syndrome. That is a non-exhaustive list, blah blah blah.
Like the presumption
of innocence, which isn't wrong necessarily, but it's the sense that, like,
it's wrong when it comes at the expense of protecting other people.
right.
Which of these traits could be a problem in some circumstances in the extreme? The expectation to be self-critical, passive, weak, victim, afraid, irrational, pretty. I mean, damn. I feel like a lot of these in the extreme could be, not the greatest.
Laci, any trait of anyone in the extreme can and will be bad. But any trait of anyone can and is most usually really good. Humans in general are good people. There are just examples of horrendous people no matter where we go. And unfortunately, these are the people that make the headlines, that people notice. More often than not, the people that we are talking about when we discuss toxic people are the very, very loud minority.
It could also be bad to be, vaginaing in this extreme vagina. That's me. All right, I don't know. You guys tell me what you think. Thanks for joining the discussion, guys. Love y'all. Happy New Year. I will be back next month. See you then. Mwah.
That's all from me, bitches. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe down below. And do me a favour and share this on your social media so other people can see it. Thanks a lot. Peace out.